This podcast is made possible in part by WKTV Community Media.
Welcome to the Be Nice podcast, where we dive into conversations that help us recognize, understand, and take action when it comes to mental health and suicide prevention. I'm Christy Buck, your host. The Be Nice action plan is simple. Notice, invite, challenge, and empower. 4 steps that can change and save a life. Together, we'll share real-life stories, insights, and tools to break down the stigma, the number one barrier to people not seeking help and treatment. Remember, these are open conversations about mental health. We're going to be challenging myths, talking about resources, reducing stigma, and making people more likely to help seek treatment. That's ultimately what we want to do. Today, my guest is Erin Aldrich, my coworker, my friend, but someone who has a lot of specialties, and when it comes to Be Nice, she is extremely knowledgeable. Erin became familiar with the Mental Health Foundation of West Michigan when her high school adopted the Be Nice school program. And her many years, she participated in Stomp Out Stigma, but now her role is the business program coordinator. She helps onboard new business clients, who we have also interviewed many times on the podcast, and works with existing Be Nice businesses to facilitate programming within companies. It's a huge job, but in her free time, Erin is a dance coach and even takes a few dance classes herself to protect her mental health. She is passionate about understanding how exercise, being part of a team, and expressing oneself through something so amazing like dance can be extremely protective to someone's mental health. With this in mind, we're going to introduce the first myth, and Erin's going to help us bust it. So the myth, Erin, today is supporting an athlete's mental health means coddling them. The fact is, supporting mental health does not mean removing the challenges, expectations, and accountability. It means recognizing the whole athlete and helping them develop. So here you are, Erin, as a coach, and you yourself take care of your mental health. So tell us more how you got into coaching something that you loved, maybe you did, as a child, and where you have taken it since then.
Yeah, I started, like most people, when they were 2 in a little tap ballet class that I don't even know if I learned any actual moves, but there's some home videos buried deep of that class, and I have done it ever since. So I did it all the way through when I graduated, and that was one rule at the studio that I grew up with, is you had to have graduated high school to be a teacher. So I had shown some interest in student teaching, and I was helping in other classes. So when I graduated, there was a spot open for a teacher for some little kid classes. So I started with the little ones right back where I started, and that was over 15 years ago now. So now I've grown to be able to work with at all ages, and from 2 through adult and recreational through competitive, and it's been really fun to kind of take something that was a hobby and a passion of mine growing up and be able to share that with the next generation of dancers.
One thing that I love is that you still dance and you still compete. So still competing, I kind of think probably helps being a good coach. Yeah. Because it reminds you of the angst. Yeah. Because I don't know. I mean, I've never danced competitively, but I feel like it can be a sport that can bring on anxiety, good anxiousness, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me about it. Yeah. Have you ever struggled? Have you ever felt that point where maybe you even wanted to give up your sport?
Yeah, absolutely. I think still being competitive myself helps me to be able to see it from the dancer's point of view. I mean, most teachers grew up doing these things that we're now teaching to our students, so we have that background, but still being in it every year with them, I think, helps bond us in a way that's a little bit unique. And I think anybody who goes through a subjective sport where you're putting yourself out there to be judged by others, it's unique from other sports where, if you make a basket in basketball, you made a basket. Like, there's not really a question about that. But in a sport like dance or gymnastics where you're being judged on how well you did something and it's somebody's opinion on that, is a pretty unique thing. And there's definitely been times where, the anxiety got to me and I thought, is it even worth putting myself through this all the time? I remember there was one specific time, it was one of my very first times ever competing at nationals. So I didn't grow up in a huge, very competitive studio. We we started competing pretty late into when, I was dancing, which is kind of rare. A lot of people start competing a lot younger. I was 14 the first time I competed, and now I'm teaching kids who are competing at 6. And one of my first nationals, I was so anxious, so stressed. And I'm also just kind of a perfectionist person, so that certainly didn't help. And I got up there and I forgot my entire dance, and I just stood there as like an older teenager. Like, that doesn't happen to older teenagers. It's normally little kids that's happening to. And I just stood on the stage and did absolutely nothing. And it was so horrible in the moment. But I think now, having that experience and being able to tell my students about how that happened to me, and they can't imagine that happening to their teachers, but that happened to me, and I was able to get through it in the moment somehow. I don't really remember how, but, come back the next year and be determined, like, that was never going to happen to me again. And I think it really plays into how I prepare for things now. And being able to share that with them, I think hopefully gives them a little bit of a confidence boost of, like, if Miss Erin can get through it, then I can get through it. I
love that you are continuing to do this. And were you ever burned out coaching? I mean, now we've talked a little bit about competing at that point where maybe I'm going to just quit. What about coaching? What, as a coach, what do you see?
I think definitely. I mean, I feel like with a sport like dance where the season is so long, I mean, we really start preparing all year long, but we start really preparing in August. The kids start in September, and then we are competing at nationals in July. So there's not really an off season. And I think most dance teachers, and myself included, get to like that point of May, June, and we're like, all right, this year has dragged on for a long time. But I think part of what makes it it's what makes it difficult, and also what makes it rewarding, though, on the other side, is that we obviously care about these kids as artists and as dancers, but we care about them as people too. And that is just, a lot sometimes to take on. You've got 50 students and you are worrying about what's going on with them in the classroom, what's going on with them at home. And it comes to a point where, like, do I even have any creative ideas left to give? Sometimes people leave or things happen in the studio, and you're like, think it reflects on your work or your worth as a teacher. And that can be pretty hard to come back from, but especially in something that requires so much creativity and like your own brain to come up with these dances, you definitely get to the point where you're like, do I even have any ideas left that haven't been done before? So in 15 plus years of doing this, there's definitely been moments where I'm like, I don't know if I have anything left. And then the new season starts and everybody comes back all excited and you get, revigorated again, and then you start all over.
I love it. Absolutely. So I know that a lot of sports, especially when you get to that point of competitive sports such as this, with families dropping out, it can sometimes be a financial strain.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what is your studio, or have you ever heard of studios out there that are helping those who can't afford? It's just so interesting to me how expensive sports, not only dance, but ice skating and gymnastics and hockey.
Yeah, a lot of really all sports, but so many of those sports have, with everything, the cost has just skyrocketed, especially in the last few years. And I think it's something that we're always aware of and willing to work through with people. I mean, we already have one of the lowest tuition fees in the area. That's, pretty unique to some of the major studios, the much bigger studios. But just, like how we do in school, how we do a school sports, we lean heavy into the fundraisers. And that's something that the money goes right back to the students. So if you're willing to put in the work, if your parents are willing to put in the work to help, do some of those fundraisers, then that's just more that comes back to you guys. But ultimately, it comes down to making the smart choices too. And sometimes that's the difficult choice. And that's when it's really hard we have to do the responsible thing, and my kid can't take as many classes, even though they love dance and they've been so involved. We have to scale back on classes. And then we just try and, continue to get that training in when they are there. But it is definitely, a two-way street between us and the families to make sure we try to come, and find a solution to keep the kids in dance where they love it.
I love it. And that to me is so important because we know at work, and we know when we're teaching in schools, that we encourage parents to get their kids involved in something.
Yeah.
And obviously dance is, well, I see it through you. You can do it forever. So anyway, did that also lead to other opportunities for you in that doing some other things? Would you ever have the ambition to actually own your own studio?
I don't know. I think that being like in the classroom and being on the administrative side they're very different, and they take very different like interests and skills. I think I love my owners. We actually just went through a transition where our studio has now transitioned owners. The people who owned it for close to 20 years saw that, like, you know, times were changing and they needed to have, you know, younger people in charge, and they were feeling burnt out and not being able to be in the classroom the way that they love to. And, you know, the whole reason they started this in the first place. So we've kind of gone through that transition in the last few years to new owners, and I love them all. And I don't think I would want to have that responsibility of, you know, owning the actual studio. I'm so happy to just be a part of the team and help support where I can, but my love is definitely in the classroom. Awesome.
I know that in this sport, and a lot of oftentimes individual sports, how important getting to the actual lessons, how important is parental involvement?
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, we especially, you know, we are kind of in a unique situation where we have a pretty big group of adult dancers, which is really rare in our field and in the world of dance. But especially for the younger dancers, I mean, we only see them X amount of hours a week. I mean, even some of the kids that are in the most classes, we're seeing them maybe 8 to 10 hours a week. And we just can't fit everything into those, you know, that time that we have with them. So that parental encouragement, both with the practicing side of it, you know, they have to have the support from their parents. Kids don't always want to do the things and practice the things. So having that support from parents to remind them, like, hey, practicing at home and the homework that your teacher gives you, and let's do it together, or I'll help you. That encouragement from them is so important. But the other place where I've really seen the most importance for parental involvement is on the competitive side. I have seen firsthand the difference it makes when a kid comes off and they don't feel like they did their best, and the way that their parent reacts is night and day how the rest of that day goes for that kid. You know, even no matter what we tell them as teachers, we can tell them all day, like, you did so amazing, we're so proud of you. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, what they're ultimately looking for is what their parents think of how they did. So if they come off and they're not feeling the most confident, and their parent, you know, is there to cheer them on and say, like, I thought you did amazing, I'm so proud of you, no matter what, no matter the score, that, you know, makes a really big difference in how the rest of the day goes. You know, many of these kids are in multiple dances. They probably have 5-6 more dances to do that day. So if they get that boost coming off the one that doesn't feel so good, it's going to ultimately, you know, make the rest of them go better, versus if they come off and don't get that encouragement, you definitely see the difference in their performance.
It. Do you take the opportunity to talk with parents like that at the beginning of the season or before big competitions?
Yeah, we have a parents meeting before the year starts. And I think it's something that we could definitely, especially with me doing this work, I think I have a little bit more of a platform to stand on to say, like, this is so important. I mean, a lot of times we get bogged down in the logistics of getting through the competition season. Like, it's such a logistical nightmare, but I think we can always and forever do better at talking about how this is impacting their kids, you know, mental health, and how we can, you know, be supportive of that as a whole team. I mean, we as teachers, we're on the team of the kids. Like, we just want what's best for the kids. So if we can be on the same team as the parents in doing that, that's something that we will always and forever talk more and more about.
All right, get this one. Student athlete mental health, 39% report daily mental health concerns, and that's according to the NCAA. And another quick stat, female athletes are more likely to report anxiety, depression, distress, and disordered eating, while male athletes report more alcohol misuse, illicit drug abuse, and gambling. 2024 study that occurred. So what can coaches look for. Now we're going to go into the action plan, and I don't need to remind you what that is, but give us a quick run through of the action plan and how it can be utilized for athletes.
Yeah, I think the amount of time that we spend with, especially in the dance world, the amount of time that we're spending with these students put us in a kind of unique spot to be able to notice things that maybe other people in their life aren't noticing. They're in school to study, and that might be a different, kid than what's at home than what's at dance. We just see a different side of them, and especially we get to know them. Those kids that have started at 2 and now they're 12, still dancing with us. We just get to know them so well. And I think we can really notice when a kid is starting to act in a way that's not really like them, or maybe they are a little bit more reserved than they normally are. And I think we have, at least with a lot of our students, have that kind of connection with them where they are a little bit maybe more willing to have that conversation with us than their parents, And so I know with adults and kids, there's always like consideration of making sure that we're having those conversations in a way that, is safe for everybody involved. But I think we can, invite a conversation in a way that's unique to the other people in their lives, just because we have, built up that trust with them and spend so much time with them. And dance is empowering at the end of the day. So I think that's part of my goal always is to remind kids, like, they started this because they love it. And even if it feels difficult right now, or something difficult is going on right now, this can be and should be a protective factor for them. And we've had kids that it's not that anymore. And that's really hard for a kid to say goodbye to dance when it's not, it's not a protective factor for their mental health anymore. And it's, actually, stressing their mental health, challenging their mental health. But you have to be, willing to have those conversations too of like, that's maybe it's not the thing for them anymore. And that's sad and it's hard, but it's an important conversation to have.
I think it's just amazing how dance, where it's come from, and, part of it is through cheerleading, obviously, that a lot of kids that cheerlead also dance just because you've got that talent already built in you.
Yeah.
But the opportunities to participate in high school sports. Do you think most of the dancers that take private lessons, do they involve themselves in high school athletics, or is it more just private dance studio and not getting involved?
I think our studio is a little bit different. I think if you ask somebody from another studio, they might have a different answer. A lot of, the very big competitive studios, like, that is all you do. And sometimes they might be on the school dance team because the entire team from that studio makes up the entire school dance team because all of their students come from the same school. But at our studio, we have kids from, if I had to count, probably 15 different school districts. So it's not like that where the whole team is now going and taking over the school dance team. But we have worked really hard to make sure that our kids can be involved in other things because I feel like that's what leads to the increased burnout with dance and the increased desire to quit is when that's all you have to focus on for 15 years of your life. So I think there's definitely, and there's skills that they can learn from these other, other sports, other school activities, being on the school dance team. We've had soccer players and basketball players and wrestlers and, all these sports that you wouldn't think would necessarily correlate with somebody being a dancer. But they learn different pieces of athleticism and skills that they can then bring into dance and makes them a unique dancer from everyone else. And also the more that they can, be a part of a team, whatever that might look like, whether that's at school or at the studio where they're now with all these kids that they don't go to school with, so now they've got this different team. That's just more people in their corner. So we always encourage kids to explore their other interests besides just dance, even though it is a big time commitment.
Excellent. So you've been working at the foundation for...
Oh, geez. I think I'm going on
5?
Yeah, it'll be 5 in the summer. Next
All
summer.
right. And what brings joy to you at work?
Oh, there is so many things that bring joy to me. We just had this question where I had to answer this. And the thing that kept coming back to my mind is that moment when you're talking one-on-one with somebody and they just, you can see that click where they get it.
Yeah.
A lot of times we're talking to people I kind of see myself, especially in the business program, talking to people who are kind of in two camps. I'm talking to people who have never talked about mental health ever, and this is the first time they're having these conversations, or I'm talking to people who might be in the HR field, or they're in the medical field, and they're talking about this stuff all the time. But that moment where you see like, oh, that person gets it now. And obviously the big, exciting activities and events, like those are all really fun and they're great and they're important. But those one-on-one conversations, when you can see that switch flip, is my favorite part.
Absolutely. Well, you do amazing work, Erin, and working with kids and some adults at dance, but then in addition, working with folks in that profesh world.
Yeah.
It's really important, and we know it. The work we're doing can save lives.
Yeah.
So in closing with you right now, Erin, where do you see Be Nice business going from here?
Oh, that's a big question. I just want to continue to grow, which seems like a simplistic answer, but ultimately, the more businesses we're in, the more fields that we're in, that's more people who are getting this life-saving tool, the more people that are impacted. And that, for me, at the end of the day, is the most important. How many people can we get this tool in their hands? And for me, in my role, that's through the lens of a business. But I think there's definitely some fields out there that we haven't reached yet that I would love to see us reach, in the coming years that could really use a tool like this.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thank you for listening to today's episode of the Be Nice podcast. Today, we busted a harmful myth potentially that maybe gets in the way of people getting help and treatment. We hope that by sharing these conversations, like the one we had today with Erin, will empower you to break down stigma. But maybe you're in HR, or maybe you work in a company where culture building of mental health is necessary and needed. Please know that we are here to take those calls and to help you break down that stigma. If today's episode resonated with you, reach out. You might reach out to a person who may need it. Don't forget, if someone you know is struggling, there are resources available. And please know, texting NICE to 741-741 is one way, but then in addition, the National Crisis Helpline, 988, is there for you. But for now, please remember to take the pledge at benice.org and be nice.
This podcast is made possible in part by WKTV Community Media.